All right, welcome to the Band of Brothers podcast. I'm here today with an old ranchero, Rob Eastman. How you doing, Rob?
I'm good. How are you? Been a
I'm
long
doing.
time.
It has, bud. It has. How you been?
Busy. It's
Have
been
you?
a wild, really 4 years, but a
Yeah,
busy last year. And then I think since we've seen each other, it's probably been at least 10 years, maybe
probably, dude. Since
yeah,
we
so
in person saw each other, probably.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been 13, a little over 13 years. So 14 years actually, is it?
Since
Yeah,
you were at the
14.
ranch.
Yeah, 14, 2009.
That's what I. That's right. That's right. That's funny. Well, let's go ahead and get started, dude. So let's just
Cool.
start at the beginning. When was the first time? Like, how old were you when you first put a mind altering substance in your body, drugs, alcohol, whatever?
Yeah, I think it started pretty early. It was the first grade when they started talking about ADHD, and my teacher had kind of diagnosed me. It was brand new, and they told my parents that they would hold me back if they couldn't figure out me calming down. And it was later that year, my teacher was like, "Why can't you sit still like everybody else? Come take your pill and sit down." And the
Hmm.
class laughed at me, and I was like, they must not have to take a pill, so I'm not going to take a pill. So I quit taking it, pretending like I did, but it was probably, I think I was like 12, probably about 12. And I was watching a Denver Broncos game, and the news came on, and they talked about one of abusing his Ritalin.
Hmm.
And I remembered that name, and I was like, I was pretty suicidal from third grade up. And so I went in the pill, went where we kept our pills in the kitchen and found the Ritalin bottle. And I remember later that night taking a handful of them and having a almost hallucinogenic experience. And it really freaked me out. And that was the first time that I really felt altered. And a little backstory on my family was suicide was not acceptable in our family. Like my grandma committed suicide. My dad or my grandpa drove his truck off of a bridge. And
Wow.
the first time I, tr- the first cry for help, but it was with a gun. And that was the first time my dad really looked me in the eye, and he's like, if you were to die, I don't know what I would do. I don't know if I'd make it. And when I was hurting, it wasn't like I wanted to hurt anybody else. I just didn't want to feel the way I felt. So
Right.
growing up LDS and all that, I was like, well, I can't kill myself. I can't take drugs or alcohol. And it was shortly after that, I think it was right my first week of sophomore year. I just, the emotional and spiritual pain was too much, and got invited to go smoke weed. And, played the, like, well, my mom, she'd rather me be here than not. And, I had a lot of
Mhm.
around that, went and smoked weed, and all my pain went away for a minute.
Yeah.
And so that was, for a guy like me that's high rev, it was like, hey, I need more of that. I need more of that. I need more of that. And that started the cycle of anything and everything to alter my state of mind. And then I think what defied it was I was a high level soccer player,
Hmm.
and I sprained my ankle in a really important game. And back in the 90s, either a dad was a doctor or somebody had a med on the sideline. And I
Hmm.
remember them taping my ankle up and being like, we need you, take this and get out there. And it was a Percocet. And I ended up going out and scoring 2 goals. And it wasn't, in my head, it wasn't because I was a great soccer player. It was whatever they just gave me.
Yeah.
So next game, oh, my ankle hurts. Do you have another one of those meds? And it just, kind of was accepted just one at a time. And then we started seeking it out. And friends' dads were doctors. And back in the day, they'd have somas and a little snack pack in the room. When the doctor would leave, we'd check all the drawers, and it
Hmm.
just kind of snowballed from there.
So did you start drinking and stuff as well, or was it mainly
It was
just
it it,
whatever?
it was it was a little bit of everything. It was whatever, I justified acid that I wasn't drinking or smoking. It's like they never said anything about that. So taking some acid and things like that. And it just got to the point where my normal state of mind was super anxious. My mind's going a million miles an hour, sucked at school, letting my parents down. And it was just like those few minutes of being able to not worry about that. And then we all know how that goes when you're coming down. You remember all the things that you just were running from, and now they're doubled. So
Right.
we just kept going. And I was a I was a pain in the ass. And not many people could stand me for very long. So including myself. So it just kind of made sense.
So how did like what kind of feelings were you medicating? Like, were you getting rid of? Do you think like what was it giving you relief from? Maybe that's a better way of putting it.
I think I thought about ending my life, not being around on a daily basis from, back. It started in shortly after my baptism,
Wow.
where they told me my life would change if I got baptized and all these things. And I think I was in such survival mode. I got bullied physically, emotionally, verbally from kindergarten, like daily. It was bad. And so in my little 8-year old mind, getting baptized and having this spirit, I was going to be good at math. I wouldn't
Hmm.
bug everybody all the time. And I just didn't want to be there. We didn't have all the news channels, and I didn't even know you could actually kill yourself. I just knew that I didn't want to be around. So by the time I got to high school, I was a cup with a hole in the bottom of it. If you weren't pouring into me, I was empty and attention seeking and just miserable.
Yeah.
So it was, depression. It was not living up to the standards of my community, letting my parents down, just seeing that despair in everybody's face every day. And teachers like, oh shit, he showed up to school today.
Yeah.
It's just, it was, got bullied and returned, became a bully. And, the harder I acted, the less people would mess with me. And that was my defense.
Yeah.
So it was like, really hated the guy looking back in the mirror. Just didn't like, I can't think of too many happy moments in my life until really, in my 20s. And some of those are maybe made up in my own head, that if I wasn't on the soccer field or the basketball court where people were like excited to have me on the team because I was a damn good athlete,
Hmm.
it just didn't transfer into the real world.
So what happened with soccer out of high school? And that.
So I was playing pretty high level soccer, and I had some opportunities for college and opportunities to go abroad and play. And I came back and ended up getting in trouble with some buddies, and we got in an altercation with a kid and his dad, and the dad ended up being a highway patrolman. And they so being with my grades and now in trouble with the law, my scholarships went away, Europe went away. It just didn't wasn't going to happen. So the one thing that I had to look forward to was gone. And no life skills really, because I think I was so babied. I was so mentally ill, so depressed, that it was easier just to make me feel better than to sit me down and make me practice the life skills.
Yeah.
Sitting down for homework was, I'm pretty confident my mom is the one that got me graduated. She did a lot of homework and, just wanted me to do good. And in return, she just made it happen. So working on myself, sitting with myself, developing those skills just wasn't in the cards. So my dad owning car dealerships and things like that, it was like, maybe if we make him the sales manager, he'll turn his life around. And I love the badge and being in charge of people, but It was more of a high paying babysitting job. It's like I
Okay.
got moved around from service to parts to sales, and I thought I was learning the business, and really that manager was like, dude, I can't handle it. So when the time came to sell the business, it was like, I'm so glad we're retired, Dad. He's like, I'm retired. Like, you're not retired. What are you gonna do? And that's really when I just kind of wanted to be on my own and do my, be an adult and make adult decisions. And it just spiraled, went hard. And, from my first job outside of family was laying tile. And our first job was tiling the casinos in Wendover.
Oh,
So you can
wow.
imagine spending 2 weeks with a bunch of construction guys living in the casino, how that went. And I don't know, I just seemed to attract those people that, I thought I was the man, but I think everybody liked me around because they knew I was going to do something stupid.
Mhm.
I thought I was the king when really I was the court jester.
That's,
And,
I've never heard it put that way. That's pretty interesting.
and just being a clown and aggressive and, could manipulate pretty good. If I was down and out on money, I could make an excuse to get some money from my parents and drive the cool car and have the pretty girlfriend and dress that present up pretty good, but just not doing good inside.
Yeah. So how does it progress from Wendover? Where do you end
Oh
up?
man. So for me, it was like in high school, I started drinking for sure every weekend, if not more. I took photography so I could have an excuse to lock the dark room because you can't open that when I'm developing film. And I'd go in there and drink a 6 pack. And my girlfriend's dad was a doctor and she'd steal pills. And so by the time I was out of high school, I was using something weekly for sure. And then when I got on my own, it was my ex brother-in-law introduced me to cocaine for the first time. Then one of the jobs at our dealerships, the guy that took care of the washing the cars and all that, he was a meth dealer, and all of these things added together in the beginning were super fantastic. So it was I needed the pills, so I didn't withdraw. The drinking's what started it. Then that'd trigger the response for some coke and some meth. Then I'd need to come down, and it just I think by 2000, I inside of 1996 to 2007, which was my first rehab visit, I got married and divorced twice. I got engaged once, and that broke off, all due to drugs, alcohol, mental health. Lost at least 6 friends to overdose. It's when Oxycontin got big,
Yeah.
and it was looking back. I'm just like, how did one I not go to prison, and two my loved ones around me or whatever not just write me off? It's like
Right.
just always just a soft enough landing to not want to get all the way healthy.
Yeah.
And
To
then
not hit the bottom all the way. Not hit,
yeah, so then it
pain
came.
is a big motivator for change, I think.
Yeah, and I think that was really tough for my family. And my dad was a senator and my uncle's one of the 12 apostles, and there's a lot of eyes on us, and they just, I don't know if it was saving face or just didn't want to see me suffer. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that came to a head. I was leaving one of my friend's funerals, and by this time, 2007, I'm a IV drug user, and I saw the pain in his family's face and just seeing him hurting, and I'm like, man, I can't keep this up. And I had now been introduced to shooting coke and heroin, and at the time, I owned a concrete company, and so I had money, and I went down to my shop, and I'm like, I'm going to rehab. I was people don't remember unless they're our age that we had phone books. I remember
Yeah.
driving in my buddy's car, looking through the yellow pages of like addiction and that, and I found CERT and had called and got an appointment, and the funeral was like on a Monday, and they said they had a bed on Wednesday. So I went down to my shop and shot up again. And the kid I was with said that I came out of the bathroom sweating real bad and had my head on the concrete. And he, bleeding out of my ear, mouth. And he bailed because he didn't want to get in trouble and felt bad a few minutes later and called 911. They came down and worked on my body, got my heart going again, rushed me to the hospital, and they saw that I had a brain hemorrhage and flew me up or drove me up to the U of U, where I flatlined a few more times, ended up in a drug induced coma, and that was shortly after that. Found my way to rehab, and that was the first time that sat in a room full of people who were like me, but then there was some accountability and some action steps at the end, and
Mhm.
I thrived. Like, I look back, if I would have gone to the military, I would have been running that shit. It's like when I was in a controlled area and I had structure, I did really well. But in the real world, we don't have that structure. We don't have the accountability.
Mhm.
So I thought it was amazing and got out and did
What are
great.
you, like 29, 30 at the time?
I was 29.
Okay.
I had just gotten divorced. Um, we dated for a couple years and then we got married, and that was the first time we lived together. And it's much harder to hide your demons when you share a bed together and all of that. And it only lasted 6 months, and she gave me an ultimatum. She's like, me or the drugs. And I was like, see ya. It
Mm.
wasn't even a question because I knew I'd be lying to her. I didn't want to hurt. I was never a malicious person. Like, I never introduced any of my girlfriends or wives to drugs or alcohol. Like, it was not a social thing for me. It was,
Mhm.
I just couldn't stand the way I felt inside. So she left, and
It
that's
was
I
you
overdosed.
were
Yeah,
taking necessary medicine. It wasn't pleasure seeking,
yeah,
right?
no, man. For me, it wasn't pleasure seeking pretty quickly because I was, I think the first time I drank, I had like 14 beers. It's like I was blackout guy every weekend, and just if you snorted a line this big, I was getting a triplet just for the show. And
Mhm.
found my way into that rehab, and I got out and found God again for a minute and started doing all the things I love. The athletics. I was playing on a premier team, an adult premier team in Park City, and high level guys, and really having fun. And we go through the making amends to people and all of that stuff. And I was sober for probably about a year, and I met a Mormon girl. She was pretty. It's what my family always wanted for me. I was doing good. My concrete company was back up and running. Long story short, ended up getting married in the temple, and everything was good. I'm making 35, $40,000 a month, just crushing it, and all of that, and ended up tearing my ACL at one of the games. And that's when I found that the one relationship I didn't work on was my relationship with pain. And
Mm.
at that point, I was like close to 2 years sober, and went into surgery, no pain meds. And I think from the introduction to the anesthesia, when that nerve block wore off, it wasn't even a question. Like, I had my drug dealer on, knew his number, and I had a needle in my arm within an hour or two of that happening. And then the crazy amount of shame and disappointment, because now I got married in the temple. God's pissed at me. I'm a loser. I'm lying to my wife. I couldn't let my mom and dad down because that would be the worst thing ever. And then, of course, me being the loudmouth and wanting to be seen, I'm the recovery guy and just out and AA twice a day and just getting all involved. And I felt like I would cause some other people some pain, and I just couldn't do it. So went on for, I think I got caught with a needle in my arm, sitting in the bathroom in our brand new house, probably 6 months in, and where my wife had never experienced anything like that. It's a pretty tough one to explain
Yeah.
away. And shortly after, found out we were pregnant, and everybody's like, "Oh, you're going to be a dad. He's finally going to shape up." And I just remember specifically thinking, I can't even take care of myself. How am I going to take care of this little girl? And
Yeah.
so I just spiraled out and, telling everybody I'm working on it. I'm doing better. And after she was born, it was just so much pressure that it was, I don't know, not even a year before I'd become a harm to my daughter, my wife, not in the sense of like hurting them, but just not following through, taking diaper money and buying dope and passing out and not being able to pull my weight.
Right.
Ended up back on my parents' couch, and that thought of suicide was very, very strong. And I remember the conversation I had with my dad, and that's when I was like, well, people accidentally overdose all the time. So I think that's what I'm going to do. And went down and got 6 balloons of heroin and put them in the spoon and shot up. And I remember waking up the next day going, there's no way. Like, is this hell? Do I have to keep reliving this thing every day? And it was probably 2 or 3 days after that. I was weighing like 128 pounds at the time. Just, I was bad. And my dad came downstairs one morning. I'd just sleep on the couch, spoons underneath the couch and needles hidden underneath the mattress or underneath the pads of the couch. And he came down and he was crying. He wasn't a very emotional guy very often, and passed me a note and he's like, read it. And he had sat up the night before, wrote my obituary, and said, I know you're going to die, but you can't do it in my basement. And I don't know how at that point I still had enough ego to be like, screw you, and chose to be homeless, and went and sat down at Pioneer Park. And when the gas ran out and the access to dope ran out, I finally went up. The only way I could see my daughter at this point was supervised visits, and the only way I could get in my parents' house was to see my daughter. So I set that up, and I went in and gave everybody a hug, told them I loved them, and snatched a gun on the way out. And all the tools I had in rehab and all that, played the tape to the end. In my head, I felt like everybody would be better off without me. So
Yeah.
went up to the Bountiful Temple. There's a hiking trail across the street, and it's called Sessions, and you can hike up to the top, and there's benches that you're looking like eye to eye with Moroni. And
Mm.
at that point, I was so pissed at God. I felt like I'd been lied to. Why couldn't I get it straight? And, just having this conversation, and ended up having putting the gun in my mouth and having a epiphany, if you will, of my daughter and my mom. And I felt like maybe those were two things in my soul that needed to be walked through. And the first one was my daughter, and it was pretty easy. It's like, she's 7 months old. She'll never know me. Any man could come into her life and do a better job than me. Like, she'll be way better off. Like, I
Mhm.
can't provide money, nothing. And then my mom was a super God loving woman. And so I was pretty pissed, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to pray to her God so that when he doesn't answer this prayer, when she dies, she can go look him in his face and say, you failed me. And I remember kneeling down and putting that gun just right up under my chin and saying a prayer and just talking about, I don't know anything about a still small voice. I'm going to need something a little bit louder than that. And if I don't get an answer when I open my eyes, I'm pulling the trigger. And that was August 31st, 2009. And the second I'm opening my eyes and I'm starting to pull the trigger, a firework display went off above the temple. And I'm like, is this a sign? And then right after that, I heard a voice and it said, is that loud enough?
Wow.
I collapsed and was bawling. I could like I was paralyzed. I didn't know if somebody was behind me. I didn't dare look. I didn't know if it was in my head. I just knew that what just happened, I couldn't deny. And I'm a facts guy. Like faith was never in the cards for me.
Hmm.
And knowing what I know now, it's like he gave me just enough for me to know that I'm not alone and that that wasn't the way out. And once I got my strength back and could get up, I went drove down to my parents lived right below that, and I went in, just knocked on the door, and because I couldn't come in, and told my dad what had happened. I handed him the gun, and I drove myself straight to LDS hospital, where checked into detox, and that's where me and you met. Went to went to the ranch and for one more shot, and I think that I don't know if they still do it, but that experience of walking into that house with the guys that were there at that time and experiencing that first step, like I'd never experienced anything like that. Dudes covered in swastikas, everybody else calling you on your shit, and really, really digging in. And in that moment, you got to really decide if you're willing to do this and that you're going to be an asset to the room.
Right.
And I'd never felt that. The other places they'll do whatever they can to keep you there, and it was a very easy removal system of those that weren't serious. And I think that 30 days, like I look at programs that are 30 days, and I'm thinking I was just barely able to tie my shoes at 30 days, like getting physically fit and being able to carry on a conversation and that. And I remember just like, I'm good at 30. That's when your health is back. And remember sitting there with you guys going, hey, you're staying. Like the work's just barely getting started. And that next 30 was, I think, more impactful just on a leadership role where you see the new guys coming in and you just see how full of shit they are and how sick they are and how harmful a few days of sobriety can be when you're still driving the bus. And
Right.
to have that brotherhood to be like, dude, you are so full of it. Like, be quiet, open your ears and watch how this thing works. And fought it through that. But luckily for me, I linked up with the Hedons and some other strong guys through that to help walk me through those first few years. And my dad, my wife picked me up from the ranch, drove me home because at this time she'd left, and she'd come and see me with the baby and that. I thought things were great, and we got home and I got out, and she rolled the window down and was like, by the way, we're divorced. And I just remember thinking, like, why didn't you tell me while I was in rehab so I could have done this, process this a little bit? And so instantly it was just like, oh my gosh. And then when my dad wrote that obituary, he said, we're done. And what he meant by that is, we're going to love you, but we're not paying your bills anymore. We're not doing any of that. So a few weeks later, the bank came, took my truck,
Hmm.
boarded up my house, took everything that I owned. So I'm sitting there going, it was probably, I don't know, maybe 5 months. So a couple of months out of the ranch.
So were you in aftercare? Did you go to aftercare?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And just thinking like everything's supposed to be, I'm doing what everybody wanted. I'm following the program. Like, why are these things happening to me? And then at 9 months sober, my dad died. And I was just like, dude, this is all my safety nets were gone. It's like, what I learned along the way was I always use people, places, and things to make me feel better and look better. It's like God took my wife and he's like, do you hear me yet? and I couldn't. And then he came, took all my worldly possessions, still too cocky or too caught up in my ego and too proud to listen to the message. And then at that 9 months, he took my dad, which I needed the girl to feel loved and all of that. I needed the cool stuff to make me look good. And I needed my dad to pay for all that stuff for when I couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really forced to kind of redefine who and what I was without those things. And that was probably, not probably, easily the most humbling experience I've ever had. You know, getting food stamps, going from multi six figures to, I remember getting in line at Smith's, and if anybody was behind me, I'd be like, no, go ahead. I was so ashamed to let anybody see me use an EBT card, or,
Yeah.
you know, I got a bus pass, but I would have never rode the bus. Like
Yeah.
all these things that it was just, I had to really let go of that persona that I had developed before I could ever make any moves towards a happy life with Rob Eastman, you know. And I had to redefine what success looked like. I had to take the dollar signs out because I was convinced I'd never be successful. So I came up with this idea of even if I'm homeless, I want to figure out how to be happy.
Yeah.
And I had to redefine what my God looked like because I was pissed at the one on my mom's wall. And I knew that if he was as loving as everybody says he is, and he already knows what I'm going to do or have done, then I have nothing to worry about. And started training people for free at the park. And I couldn't afford a therapist. So I got a Pell Grant, went back to school and studied psychology. And I hate school, but I loved psychology because I felt like those Psych 101 and everything after it was my life story.
Yeah.
It was like looking around the room, like, all right, am I being pumped? Like every chapter, like I could just attach it to so many events in my life. And then I would take that stuff and I would apply it to a workout. And I
Yeah.
loved seeing the change in people. And I was working somebody told me to get a job I could run on 2 cylinders, that I could leave at work, didn't have to worry about it. So I was doing marketing for a disaster cleanup company, getting paid $10 an hour, and I couldn't wait to get off work to go work for free.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually that got to a place where, and I was pretty hardcore. I took a cage fight off of Facebook at 35 years old because I was still pretty angry and wanted to beat people up, and found martial arts. That changed my life. And I
So the
started
cage
running.
fight, was that MMA?
Yeah. Yeah. So I fought from 35 to 40. And
Did you win the
just,
first cage match?
I got my ass whooped by the guy. The promoter called me and he's like, do you have any wrestling experience? So I'm literally sitting on my mom's couch and I'm on Facebook, and there's a promotion that says, we need a 155 pounder. Somebody just got hurt. We need a fill in. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that's where I'm at. And I went, hopped on the scale, and I was like 154. I knew nothing about fighting. I've never had any training, been in some street fights, and I was a pretty athletic guy. So I go and I replied back, I'm like, me. And then he said, send me your number. And he calls me. He's like, do you got any wrestling experience? And I wrestled in 7th grade and I took second at district. So in my head, I was a badass wrestler. And he's like, okay, this guy wrestles for Nebraska. Like Nebraska's top 5 in the country of
Yeah.
D1 schools. And I'm 35. This kid's 21. I'm
It's
like,
always like
oh,
Nebraska, Iowa
yeah,
State. Like it's all those farm dudes.
Penn State. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm like, dude, I'm going to kick this kid's ass. He's a little kid. And I went out there. I trained for 2 weeks, blew a rib off the cartilage. So then the last 2 weeks before the fight, I'm healing up, cutting weight. And I remember going in there and just straight willpower. He took me down. He was like a freaking bear, dude. You could not, any movement I made, he just got even closer. And I remember after the first round, I didn't understand that you got to manage for 6 minutes. You got to be like, pace yourself. So I
Mhm.
remember I just had some fill-in coaches there, and they're talking to me, but I can't hear them. Like my teeth are buzzing, tunnel vision. And I remember the feeling of them wiping my face off and patting me on the back and then leaving the cage. I felt like a little kid getting dropped off at the orphanage. I was like, here. And the other dude's over there like a dog that hadn't been fed, and came out and smashed me again for another round. And I ended up getting choked out in the third round. And I felt so, and the shame and embarrassment, I sold the place out. I made like $4,000 on ticket sales. Everybody, and I think half of them wanted to see me get my ass kicked, and then the other half were supporting me. The whole VIP section was for me. It was my first fight ever. And I remember just instantly thinking, I just let everybody down. I'm a
Were there any
loser.
ranch guys there?
Um,
Jason,
Probably.
some
I
of
did.
those guys.
I don't know. It would have been like Sheldon
Yeah,
and Jammer. Like it was
I just did a podcast with Sheldon 2 weeks ago.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, he just called me the other day. That guy's
did he?
I love Sheldon.
Yeah.
And as I'm leaving, like my head down, and as you come out of the cage, you have to see a doctor. So they check you, they give you a $10,000 insurance for anything that happens in the cage or 3 days after. And he's checking me, and I'm walking out, head down, just trying not to be seen. And as you walk through, it's all the VIP tables, and everybody's like, "That was awesome, good job." And I was like, "Nah, that guy won." They're like, "No, we would have never dared get in there. You did so good." And I'm just like trying to like these guys are crazy. They're drunk or something. Like they got it
Mhm.
wrong. And as I got in the back and sitting there and thinking like the only person in that place talking trash about me was me.
Mm.
And I was like, I'd done all this work for the exterior, keeping the world happy. And that's what I did my entire life, to not get bullied, to be a people pleaser, to fit in, to do these amazing big things, to be seen. And it was at that point I was like, I gotta do, like, I gotta love this guy. Like, I can't keep up this high rev life and constantly doing things to be seen. And so I actually called the kid that beat me up, and I went and trained in his camp for the remainder of my fight career. And it was me, him, and a Taekwondo Olympic coach. And I thought I was going to become this badass tool of destruction. And the better I got, the deadlier I became, the more calm I was. The
Mm.
more I didn't run into the fire, the more I saw bad situations and just stayed away. It's like I wanted to hurt people. And in return, with martial arts, I found honor, discipline, respect, and really learned a lot about myself. And ended up, here we are 14 years removed, and I've wrestled nonstop since. I got a job at the junior high as a volunteer. 1 year later, got the head coaching job, and I thought I would just, giving back for a minute. And 11 years later, with a couple undefeated seasons, and then I got pulled up to the high school, and I coached the high school for 5 years as a head coach. And I fell in love with being able to be not only the master but the student, getting into the kids at the age where I really dug my heels in and developed all the bad coping skills.
Yeah.
And I was able to put mental health first, them and their family second, and the sport was always third or fourth for me. Because it doesn't matter how good they are, if they don't feel good about themselves, if they're looking for mom and dad to be proud of them, they're
Mhm.
never going to live up to their potential. So it quickly became this amazing wrestling family where I got to put in all the things I learned at rehab and all the years of life coaching, and I just could apply it and stay relevant, because times have changed, but the pain hasn't.
Mhm.
Depression's not different. The anxiety's not different. The suicidal thoughts aren't different. They're just applied differently. So it helped me stay relevant in my community and give back with some honest education. What they do with it is not up to me, but
Mhm.
to sit and tell them that life's going to be okay, and that if they get good grades, that life's going to be okay, and all these things. And we grew the room. From when I first walked in, there was like 11 wrestlers. And by the time I was done, we had about 50, and
Wow.
year after year. And people that didn't even have kids on the team would show up and support the team, because they knew we were just all about the kid, the family unit. And it was, between that and my gym, and it's always just been a mental health tool.
Wow.
And I can't
How cool is that
imagine.
that you were able to take the things that you thought were your weaknesses, depression and addiction and all the stuff you learned from that, and you could help turn that, not just helping, a lot of people, it's like, yeah, and then I got active in AA. I'm not saying you weren't. Or I opened a treatment center. I worked in it's always translating that directly into the addiction world instead of, the drug recovery has very little to do with drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
It's, as we know, it was a symptom of greater things and other causes, and that's being mortal, right? Being a human being
Yeah.
that is depression. We just had a young man, 16 years old, 11 days ago, kill himself. I guess I'm supposed to say died by suicide now, but and he was like this Opie Taylor looking dude, freckles and always smiling and happy, and you just never know when that's going to happen. In fact, I'm going to send you his favorite teacher. They had him speak, and to this family's credit, they didn't hide it or guise it. They came right out and said he died by suicide. And this teacher gave a 3 minute, 4 minute talk, Rob, that unbelievable. I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
And,
I'd love
and
that.
maybe you can use it with some kids you're working with, or you probably speak at a lot of schools. Every school in the world should have somebody deliver this talk. It just takes the shame and the stigma and the what did I do wrong as a family and all the guilt and all the crap that goes along with that sudden act of fatality. And
Yeah.
so, man, how
Yeah.
cool is that what you're doing, dude? So, what do you do in recovery wise? Like, what do you do daily to to stay sober? What do you do to, I don't know, maybe just to be happy? Maybe to stay sober is, I
Yeah.
don't, I don't really think about staying sober anymore. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm not going to use today. I mean, I
Yeah.
hate to say that, but it's like, how can I find some happiness and some joy, a little bit of peace, a little bit of serenity, in my
Yeah.
day?
Yeah. So I took that working out in the park to a point where we were working out in the middle of the winter outside, and I had a pretty good following of people that want to show up, and they're like, "Hey, we love training with you, but we're not as hardcore as you. Like, we'll start paying you." So that's when I started Eastman Fitness back in 2011, which was AKA my mother's basement. And I got built it up to where I'm making like $6,500 a month, couple hours a day, training people, training my friends in the basement. And they were airing my fights at the prison. So I started getting collect calls because I had some commercials like, if your family's struggling, like, I want to work with you. And these guys are calling, they're like, "Hey, coach, I want to work with you when I get out." And I was like, "Oh man, I never thought I'd transition guys out of prison." And I had these two guys that were a double attempted murder. They had been in there since they were 17. They got out at like 30. And I remember meeting them, and I'm in my head, I'm taking them to Eastman Fitness, and we go into my mom's house, and they're covered in tattoos everywhere. Like, just, you couldn't be any more tattooed. And I look over, and my mom's in there making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I was like, "Oh shit, I don't know these guys. I'm walking them through this nice house. Like, I'm gonna have to bite the bullet and take that next step and be a big boy and face the fear of owning a business and like
Yeah.
really getting out there." So I opened a gym in Bountiful shortly thereafter, and I've been doing that ever since. So I work with people on a daily basis. So right now, currently that grew, and I moved from Bountiful. I'm in West Jordan now. Got a nice 6,000 square foot facility that is a mental health facility, but it's a gym. So we have CrossFit, we have martial arts, and then inside of that, I've got another company called the Village Effect, where we have life coaches, therapists, parenting plans. But I am deeply ingrained in youth suicide prevention, mental health, and family dynamics. So
So do you
I'm
work with a lot of kids in the gym, or is it
yeah.
okay? So you've
So
got
we
a lot
have
of
it's
kids.
yeah. So I've 100 plus a year on a 3 to 9 month basis, and then the people who just come in for the prevention stuff, but a ton of leadership, confidence. So every workout has an intention. We don't care about your PR. It's not why we're there. And the connection and the family unit and the feeling that we have from all ages. So we have classes where the parents can train with a coach in a group, and the kids are training at the same time in martial arts. So they're not in charge of each other, but they're there grinding together, learning and having intentions and accountability. And it's I just can't that's been my full-time job for the last 12 years.
Wow.
So, I speak a lot. Published author of a #1 international best-selling book.
Dude, I was just going to show that. I'll show that again.
And it's
We will
like people
shamelessly advertise this book. It's a great book.
and like people would hear my name and that I was working in the schools, and they're like, yeah, no, I can't be the same guy. Like, he got kicked out of schools and he was never of service. But I found that filled my emotional cup,
Yeah.
and it helped me remind myself that we don't have to work the intervention side. Like, we need to be, as a community, open, more honest with our neighbors, actually know your neighbor. And I got a PhD in what not to do. I should
Mhm.
probably share that, because it's great to know, you have a sales plan and all these different things, and it's great. But I've worked with a lot of millionaires in life coaching and business coaching and things, and they're always like, the money doesn't make you happy.
Mhm.
And I've worked with some really poor people that were super happy, and it's like trying to get everybody to connect again. And I've found that my facility, my gym, the way we run things is an amazing way to teach people how to do hard things in a safe environment.
Wow.
And it's been a blessing. And I have a nonprofit that we help communities in crisis and different things. So my entire world, I get shit when I go in for my birthday chip. They're like, oh, it must be your birthday. It comes once a year. And it's just like, you guys come to an hour of AA once or twice a week. I'm like, I wake up, my phone is blowing up from the second I get up till the second I go to bed. I work with the police departments. I work with the fire departments.
Yeah.
I'm up on the Senate talking, like, I'm I want to change the world, not for me, but because I know how hard my second chance was, and I had every opportunity. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that have no resources, and I can't stand it. Like, I've been to more funerals of kids under the age of 13 than anybody should ever go in their entire life. It's disturbing, and to think that, and I know what that feels like, but to see it happening so often, and then the ripple effect of that, not just in the family, but in the school community, and the untreated traumas from that stuff, because nobody dares talk about it.
Right.
So I've averaged over 15,000 students a year in speaking. Educators, like, I've had, like, I'm pretty, until this book, because I had to shut down my life to become an author, because I am not a writer. I can tell a story, but it was hard writing that book. Um, I had a podcast, and I'm getting ready to start that back up, but put everything on hold, and now I'm getting back in it and speaking at schools and really peeling back the layers. And I think we're getting to a place, and different counties are different, but I think the world is getting to a place where they crave vulnerability and
Yeah.
authenticity.
Yeah.
And I can share 2 sentences of my story, and people are sitting around me being like, oh my gosh, this is going on in my house. Like, we just got to be like, it's nice for me because I can be real and honest about myself, and I can tell real quick who my friends are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, so I used to fake who I was so that I'd have people around, and I felt alone in a room full of people. Now I know nobody, share a little bit of my vulnerability and my story, and I have a whole bunch of people around that I know are
Mm.
going to be honest and open with me. So it's like the adversary had me fooled.
Yeah.
He thought I needed to be something that I wasn't, and that felt really yucky and nasty to my soul. And I've got I found my soulmate. My wife is amazing. Three stepsons, and it's it's a fairy tale right now.
Oh,
And
dude.
even going through it, and she's launching a book. Her book comes out in 2 weeks, and her book's on financial literacy and mental health because her late husband committed suicide.
Mm.
So it's like I trained for 15 years daily with teens and suicide prevention and PTSD and all these things. And then I met a woman who had gone through it. And it's like, okay, now I know why I went through everything I went through. And to have this family and my daughter, she's 15 now driving. It's like, ah. So she was just a little thing at the
Yeah. I
ranch.
got two of those, but they're boys, dude. And
Yeah.
they're driving. They're about to be 16, and I'm kind of freaking out. But they're
Right.
actually pretty good drivers. I've been driving with them for probably more years than I should have in the little country roads. My wife would
Yeah.
freak out. I'm like, do you want them to feel confident when they get their
Yeah.
permit, when they get their license? Do you want that to be the first time they're behind the wheel of a car?
Yeah. I
So,
agree. But to without doing the work, and I kind of not stepped away from recovery, but I felt like only working with addicts, we isolate so many people that need the same message.
yeah,
Like not
yeah,
everybody's gone to that yet. Do we?
yeah.
They're not ready to go into the room, so do we just be like, okay, when your life's a mess, come see me?
No, what I think you're
So
doing there, dude, especially with the kids, is you're doing a lot of prevention work, and you're
yeah,
keeping
and
those future addicts, those future alcoholics from walking down that path and noticing, oh, I've got that physical disease now,
yeah,
along with all the depression and whatever else I have, and yeah, the prevention side is huge. I mean, the reaction side is the business I was in. It's like, okay, we got a problem. We got a
yeah.
dude that's in a serious thing. So tell me before we go, give me your funniest story with ranch guys, and probably don't use real names if it's
Oh
too bad.
boy, there's a there's a lot. We went. I think one of the
I
most
know I know those first 5 years, 6, 7, 8 years, you were really tied in
yeah,
with the
yeah. I
guys.
spent a lot of time down south and just adventuring because I felt because I was so shut down, I literally only felt like I could be around other addicts, that nobody
Mhm.
else would get me, that nobody understood me, and I didn't dare be vulnerable and all these things. And when
Yeah,
you get into those cliques and those another comfort zone, it's real easy to stay there.
yeah.
And I think that, going me and so of course I didn't follow your guys' instructions and go to sober living, but I was going to create my own. So we had four guys coming out of the ranch. I got a condo, and before it was like 3, 4 days before everybody was going to be out and moving in. One of them relapsed the day of. So now three guys are paying the rent. Then within 2 days of being in the house, me and the other guy found a bunch of dope under the thing. So now it's just two of us. We're like, maybe this is why they told us to go to an actual sober living. And but me and two guys spent a lot of time down south, and I think looking back at how we kind of stepped into adventure in a positive way. We were hunting for Montezuma's gold in some caves and facing fears and seeing people like doing some rappelling and seeing a grown man 10 feet from the edge, and he's roped up and his legs would not move. And just seeing how far people have come, I think it's, and going back and speaking at the ranch and just seeing, I've had cousins and nephews, and so many people have gone through the process, and to be able to be on the other side and give back, and also not panic when people are in a panic. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
I remember that stage. And I think it gives them a sense of calm to be like, why are you not losing it like my parents? Why are you not? It's like, because you're going to be fine. Like
yeah.
stick to the path and go through. So
Well, you've
it's
really
all in
been a
that.
pioneer in your family, Rob. You've stopped the cycle of suicide, of addiction, of you've broken a lot of chains, and that's I talked to a lot of guys, and over the years, I've worked with a lot of guys, and every one of them almost to the guy, who do you think you're the black sheep of the family? Hand goes up. And I'm like, let me just tell you who you really are. You're the pioneer, you're the savior, you're the guy that's going to break the cycle and break the chains, not only of current and future, but of things that happened in the past and generations before and after. So,
Yeah.
guys in recovery, when they feel really heavy and it seems like a lot of work, my opinion, we're not just doing the work for ourselves,
Yeah.
and we're carrying that load, and that black sheep becomes that white knight pretty quick, which you've
Yeah.
become, by the way.
Yeah. Even outside of family, I'll get, I don't know, 5, 10 messages a week of random people being like, thank you for being vulnerable and posting what you post. You changed my life. I don't like to feel when they say that, it kind of makes me feel weird, but just we're not, you don't know who's watching,
Mm-hmm.
you know, your kids, your family, but there's so many people watching because they're on that edge and they're afraid to break out of it and maybe show up in AA and fear they might know somebody or whatever. And it's like you just don't know. So it kind of takes the pressure off when it's like, you know what, I'm going to do me. And if it helps, great. If not, more power to you. I carried too many crosses for too long. And I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because I know that I wish I would have had somebody like me when I was younger that loved me enough to tell me the truth,
Mm-hmm.
not in a shaming way, but in a like, hey, you can go down that path, but I can give you some examples of why not to. Give you a hug and move along. And I think that's where my power comes from is being able to connect because I turned 46 in January
Wow,
and my
you're
soul's
young,
about
dude.
right and my soul's 6. So I connect well with the younger
Yeah,
crowd. I've got a lot of excitement and childlike spirit to me, and I don't plan on slowing down anytime soon. My body will break long before my spirit,
yeah.
and
Let me ask you, how's your spiritual journey with God? Man, not religious, but how's your? Because I don't know many people that stay sober as long as you have that aren't tied in with their Creator in some way.
yeah. So I've you can see Buddha there. I've got a
Oh, nice.
cross on one arm. I've got Buddha on the other, and I've got a lot of people who don't understand
So
that. It's like,
what he's saying there, guys, you don't know. Rob's got beautiful tats, and he kind of looks like Conor McGregor. So if you're if
look
you're
at
just
the
listen, if you're just
those.
listening to this, oh, he's taking his shirt off now.
So it's
He's
like
got kind of a red beard,
got the
and
suicide prevention. Like I literally have my armor tattooed on to remind me what battle I fight every day. But
yeah,
for me, it was like, you guys told me to get one sponsor, so I got 5 because I was convinced that I could talk one of them into my line of thinking.
yeah,
So I don't know if you know this, but I went to Mount Everest Base Camp and took 39 cancer survivors as a team lead to Mount Everest Base Camp. Along the way, you're dealing with the monks, the lamas, and all sorts of these amazing Buddhist people. I spent time in Israel with all of those religions, high into the Mormon church. My uncle, obviously, born and raised. My ex-wife was Catholic, big into the Indian culture and doing the sweats. And it's like,
yeah,
for me, if I have to sign off on all of something, there's always, for me, there's a lot of crazy things in all of them, but there's a lot of amazing things in all of them.
yeah.
So when people ask me how's my spirituality, I tell them it's like Chuckarama. I like a little bit of this and a little bit of this, but at the end of the day, I've never felt more connected. And I was actually just talking about it today. I almost get instantaneous answers to my prayer. Once I started noticing that I wasn't going to get my way every time and that it might take some action, I was like, oh, okay, maybe my prayers have been answered. I just didn't like the answer.
Yeah.
So it's it. I have a very I call it a blessing and a curse, but I think when I got sober, I was blessed with the ability to see people's energy and feel things that weren't mine, and to kind of help me assess what's going on around me. And without support from all around me, the universe, the creator, God, Jesus, Allah, Buddha, like I call all the homies, like
Yeah.
whoever's listening, like help me out here. So, and I'm sure you found this, that when you're working with people and you say God and they don't like that, they're not gonna listen to anything else you say. So
Mhm.
I don't care what you believe in. If it makes you a better person, do more of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
agree.
I try it all, and I like to have a big tool belt, because the same thing isn't always going to work. So meditation, breathing, I have a breathing coach and an ice bath coach, and like I like to learn. I like to be the student because I'm a coach all day long. Like I want to be martial arts, jujitsu. Jujitsu is a spiritual experience for me. People
Yeah.
think it's violent. It's like when two grown men are there literally choking each other with an inch of their life and breaking down, crying and hugging and talking about life. Like yoga's not for everybody. I think jujitsu's yoga for ADHD kids. It's like whatever. If it's running, like don't outrun your bad attitude. You can't pray it away. You can't read the scriptures. Like you got to be quiet. You got to take
Yeah.
action, and you got to practice what you preach. And
Well, I think
that's
what you're saying there, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm getting from it, and I believe it, is all things are spiritual. Like
yeah,
many things we do, all things we do are that might seem mundane or might seem this or might seem violent or whatever. They're all, I mean, we know all things were created spiritually first. And I believe my kids, I teach them when you figure out a problem in school, that was a spiritual moment. That
yeah.
wasn't an intellectual moment. That was a God moment for me. And so, well, dude, it's man, I want to keep talking to you, but we got to go. So we got to, I probably need to
So
get to your
good.
gym. I need to drop at least 50 right now. Just
I,
got a full knee replacement a year ago. So I'm still trying to figure out how to navigate that bad boy. But it's been so much fun talking to you, dude. And
yeah, you as well.
I'm
You
so
would love our
happy for where you're
community.
at, dude. I'm just,
Yeah,
I could just feel the light around you. I can see it. I can hear it in your voice. And what a blessing, something happened to you, right? And I believe it's connected to our creator.
yeah,
Something changed you and it wasn't you. You just opened the door and allowed it to happen.
yeah,
And look what's happening. And you're only 45. My hell, you've got 50 more years of doing this stuff or more. And
yeah. I
look out for that.
feel like I've done more from 41 to 46 than I did in the first 41 years, because I learned how to feel,
Yeah.
calm my mind for a minute, and do what's asked of me,
It's
you
funny you
know?
say that because I had the same experience in my life. It was about 38 to 45. And that was really when I felt like I was doing what I was supposed to be doing and I was becoming a little more effective and I was enjoying it. Like
Yeah,
it wasn't work for
yeah,
me.
that's,
So,
yeah, I'm right
so if you're
there.
32 or 33 or 34 or 37 or 39 and you haven't hit it yet,
Don't
don't
wait. You
worry.
can start anytime.
Yeah.
No,
If
it's,
you're
yeah,
48 or 49, don't worry about it. Like and without all the other stuff you had, you wouldn't be feeling this now.
yeah,
So, we
yeah,
have to go through that. And like I said, pain, unfortunately, is a good motivator. But dude, I'm just so happy for you. And I'm so happy for all the people that come in contact with you. And
I
we
appreciate
need
that.
to hook up. I
Yeah, I'd
really
love
need,
that.
so I'd love to, I don't know what that means, but I
I
live
think you
down
should
south.
come and experience, just even, you created this amazing community of the band of brothers, and I think you'd be feel it the second you walked in, to see how connected people that are 74 to a 12-year-old in the same class. It's like it's really cool. So you're welcome
I'd
to
love to come
come.
witness that, dude. And
Yeah,
if I
it's
can help out in any way and volunteer not on the workout side, I'm not going to be, well, you can say this is what you shouldn't do. Don't play high school football and
yeah,
don't
right.
get overweight. Um,
Yeah,
but on the
we'd
other
love that.
side of that, I was looking at your website. If there's anything I can do to help, especially kids, I
Yeah,
really want to be more on the prevention side in my later years.
yeah. So
And
we're
I'm
going to be doing a
sorry,
bunch
I'm
of
tired of reacting to trauma and that. I want to start helping kids not get to the trauma or
Right.
not react to the trauma with that. And so,
Yeah. We set my facility up, also doubles as an event space. So microphone speakers can fit 100, 200 people. So like the end of this month, we're going to do a free kid workout with a family night and barbecue. Like it
nice.
just needs to be a comfortable, fitness should be fun, and there should be some intention, and
Yeah,
people are digging it, so
I love it, dude.
we'll
What's the
keep
name
you
of it?
informed.
It's
It's
Eastman
called
Fitness.
I changed it because again, Eastman Fitness, that was all about me. I was like, if I were to die today, people wouldn't know what this is. So I changed it to Empower Fitness because
Okay.
that's what we want to do. We want to empower people, and I want the legacy to carry on forever. It's not a I'm there's nothing magical about what I do other than it's just we don't care about your back squat. We care about how you feel about yourself when you walk through that door. And when you feel good, your back squat goes up,
Yeah.
your bench press goes up, you're an asset to the room, you're better at home.
It's
So
funny you say that because I was talking with a guy 2 weeks ago and he wants to open a treatment center and he wanted me to help him and I'm like, well, I'm asking a bunch of questions because I'm pretty picky.
yeah,
and I said, what do you think of the name? And it was the and then his first name. And I'm like,
yeah.
yeah, I don't know if you're here for the right reasons.
Yeah, I looked at all my stuff and I was like, ah, man, it was this aha moment. Like, what a
Yeah,
dick.
yeah,
It's like, I wanted to show if anybody saw the truck or this or that they knew that I was doing good,
yeah,
as if that somehow fills my cup. And that just reminded me
yeah.
that it's not about me. It never was.
Amen,
So,
dude. Well, dude, it's been great to spend time with you. Thanks for
yeah,
sharing your story.
yeah. Thank
And
you for
I
having me.
sure love you, buddy.
Love you too.
Take care, man.
All right. Bye.
See you, Rob.